but also to collaborate and to get inspired.
Welcome to CIONET International,
the international community for digital leaders that help you realize your ambition.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And with this, we are live with the 11th edition of CIONEXT. My name is Hendrik Dekkers, and it is my pleasure and my privilege to welcome all of you. We are live on Hopin, we are live on YouTube, we're live on Twitter, on Facebook, on the CIONET app, on LinkedIn, and on the CIONET website, live on 7 channels at the same time. So we are expecting a lot of people that will join us here today. And we are going to discuss the role of the CIO and the CFO, and are they joining forces for automation? ? So that's what the topic that we are discussing today. And we have a wonderful panel prepared for you to discuss this topic. Now, before we get started, I have a couple of small announcements. First of all, I would like to thank the sponsor of this conference, and that is, of course, UiPath, for making this possible. And we have Hitesh from UiPath represented in the panel with us today as well. The second thing I would like to announce is for your agendas is for CIONET members only. We are organizing on the 15th of March of this year the second edition of CIO Fest. And we are expecting more than 1,000 CIONET members in what we call our global web conference. And among others, CIOs, CDOs, CEOs from Intel and Red Hat. We will also have the CEO, Daniel Dines of UiPath, that will be with us on that day. And please register for CIO Fest at the ciofest.com if you are a CIONET member. Now, if you are interested to learn more about the digital leaders that we work with, then please go to CIONET.tv, and there you will find in-depth, long format leadership deep dive interviews with, amongst others, Eulalia Nadal, who's with us today, with Hitesh, Ramani, who's with us today, but also with, for instance, Michal Paprocki or Mark Fulsham, or 60 others, top CIOs, CXOs from around the globe. So make sure not to miss that. And another thing I would want to announce here today, and that's the first time I can show you this in real life, is the CIONET cookbook. So we've been working very hard together, and the author of this is Roger Camera, who will be with us in a moment. We've been working very hard last year in bringing together recipes for digital success, and to make sure that you have a good idea what the CIONET cookbook is all about. And by the way, you can order your copy already today. If you go to CIONET.com/cookbook, if you're a CIONET member, you will get your book sent for free. If you're not a member, you can buy your copy of the book. But to introduce that book, we have a very short video clip to explain. Make sure to get your copy of the CIONET cookbook, CIONET.com/cookbook, and it's ready to order now, will be shipped early February. It's now my pleasure to welcome our co-moderator of today, and that is Armand Angeli. Armand, if you could, in 30 seconds, please introduce yourself so that people know who you are.
So after the French cookbook, now you are the French cook. Okay, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to co-moderate with you today, Hendrik. And just in a few words, my name is Armand Angély, and today I represent the French CFO Association, DFCG, where I am in charge of international and also the RPA and AI committee. But I am also representing CFO Automation Experience, which is a big community of finance leaders in EMEA who want to exchange around RPA, AI, and all these good things within peers. So again, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you and co-moderate this impressive panel.
Okay, Armand, let's make a great show of this conference. And the first guest that I would like to introduce is our friend Roger Cameras. Roger is head of research with CIONET International. And Roger has done a great research program and has written a report that's called Towards the Fully Automated Enterprise. He's interviewed many, many different CIOs on the topic. And Roger, if you could, in a nutshell, explain us what you have discovered and what the conclusions are in this report and why people should get a copy of that report.
Thank you very much, Henrik, and a warm welcome to you all. This is a report published at a time of great change, as you all know. Change in the sense that we've had a pandemic, which has compressed the digital developments from 20-year cycle down to probably no more than 2 years. It's been a vast change. At the same time, the way we work, the way we shop, the way we live our lives has changed dramatically. So in that sense, organizations are very hard stretched right now to deal with such changes and respond to them. In our report, in conclusion, we're finding that organizations are themselves struggling to meet the demands of the consumer and their employees and their shareholders, all three together. But the good news, I think, in the report is that automation is about to go through a breakthrough. We've all been automating our organizations for 30 or 40 years. If we've been in the IT industry, we know the successes, we know the failures. Fortunately, new tools and techniques are becoming available, particularly thanks, I think, to UiPath and its development of RPA, AI, and low-code, no-code. These tools, we believe, will be a breakthrough. But it has to be said, they're not going to happen overnight. There is a journey to be made, and I think it's the CFO and the CIO who've got to get together here to force the pace. So let me just dig very quickly into some of the conclusions of the report. Firstly, I mentioned a confluence of forces are at the moment disrupting our economies worldwide. In particular, customers have become much more demanding. They look for a frictionless experience in everything that they do, and they're getting it. Hybrid working has become the norm. That set a whole range of new tasks to us on how we integrate home working with office working. And particularly here, the war for talent keeps surfacing in every conversation I have with CIOs and chief digital officers. Where can we get the talent necessary to manage the changes that we face? But I think the third thing, which is so important, is the fact that in the last couple of years, big tech, the hyperscalers, are now dominating the economy. For example, Apple is actually worth more than the whole of the British economy. Just 6 big tech companies are worth more than all the European equity markets put together. This really does paint a picture which says if we don't get our act together in the mainstream of industry, we are not going to survive against the newcomers who seem to be winning all aspects of economic competition. And in particular, we all believe that we have to be customer intimate, we have to be operationally excellent, and we have to be product and service innovators. That's always been the case. But the tragedy really is that most companies can't possibly do all of those three to a high standard. Unlike the big tech companies and the hyperscalers who can do all three to a much higher standard of excellence. So that really causes us to think, how can we change our own games, particularly in the more traditional industries, manufacturing, retail, financial services? What will this new set of automation techniques actually deliver to us? Well, we saw in the report three things. The first thing was that big corporates that we interviewed were using automation, particularly RPA tools, for short-term fixes. We all recognize that probably 30% of office work can be easily automated because it's repetitive. It's all back office stuff. Why would we have to have people doing work that a machine can do today? And certainly a lot of effort now is going into eliminating all that repetitive manual work. The second really important point is legacy. Organizations may not talk about it, but they are struggling with it. Just the British government recently announced that they're putting £8 billion into trying to re-platform legacy across central government. How do we build the bridge between that legacy and the modern systems? Well, again, RPA can play a major role. It's not the final solution, but it is a necessary stepping stone to integrate and eliminate legacy with modern applications. But I think the more important and much tougher task is to actually re-engineer, redesign our critical processes end to end. And that combines the RPA tools with process mining, still reflection of business process re-engineering and redesign of the 90s. The tools are here now. We can do this. And again, in our interviews, we met with a number of organizations, particularly insurance, who recognize what the critical processes are, and they're now pushing very hard to redesign them end to end. But I think the third thing is an entirely holistic approach. We're all moving into the cloud. Applications today can be re-platformed, re-engineered into a very much more digital, modern environment. And examples, again, Euroclear, we're talking about a vast program to re-platform their traditional applications. And in the extreme, of course, most organizations are saying, we can modernize our factories, but how do we take on big tech, the newcomers? And I think in that respect, they're setting up entirely new organizations, new business models to do that. So the question really is, how can the CFO and the CIO join forces? Do they need to join forces? And I think the answer is clearly yes. If we're to defeat some of the major competitors, we've got to be able to act like them. We've got to automate rapidly. And we came up with three particular areas where I think the CFO and the CIO can join forces. The first is actually to invest within the businesses in automation pilots to create centers of excellence where these new tools and techniques can be exploited and demonstrated so that the business really gets a grasp of what the potential here is. We haven't got a lot of time. I mean, these experiments need to take place in months rather than years. The second really important point about this is to educate the business. I don't think many people at board level, even today, really appreciate what RPA, artificial intelligence, low code, no code actually mean. They've no real personal experience. They need to know quickly. They need to see outcomes demonstrated quickly. They need agile approaches to demonstrating the value of these tools. And I think the third thing, of course, which is so necessary, and this is where the CIO plays a big role, is that these tools need to be industrialized. There's no point in popping in a few robots here and there. This has got to be a cross-the-board campaign, Standards have got to be laid down, platforms have got to be developed, and governance has to be put in place so that we have full interconnectivity between these tools, these robots, and particularly, of course, secure integration and secure access. These tools are going to come into play. They need to be maintained. They need to be safeguarded. That's a role that the CIO particularly has to play. So I think in conclusion, we felt from the report and from talking to some of the most senior digital leaders in Europe, automation has to accelerate. I mean, to put into perspective, in our own country, UK, in the last 20 years, there has been zero improvement in productivity, despite billions of pounds being spent in technology, innovation, all those good things, has delivered nothing. We can't continue in the face of big tech, who really do demonstrate what technology can do. The second important point here is that these tools, RPA, AI, low-code, no-code, are maturing fast. They're no longer science fiction, they are reality. They're being installed across most big organizations. The real challenge is to accelerate their adoption. So I think we're in a relatively embryonic stage of this new phase of automation, but we are being called upon as digital leaders to accelerate this and to work hand in hand between the CFO and the CIO to essentially invest, to govern, to educate and support. So thank you very much, Henrik. I hope that will stimulate some conversation.
Absolutely, Roger. Thank you so much for that introduction. I mean, you paint a very interesting, black and white, but it helps. 30% of office work can be automated, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about that. And it's now my pleasure to bring all our panelists here on board with us today. And so here they are. And so what I would like to do is first do a small tour de table, a small round of the table so that everybody can introduce herself, himself. So in just 1 minute, Krista, if you could get started, unmute yourself and tell us who are you and what's the company that you work for.
Thank you very much, Hendrik, and happy to be here to discuss this very important topic with all of you today. My name is Krista Köhnen. I'm a CIO, CDO, and member of the board of DB Schenker. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Krista. Eulalia?
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks again also for inviting us. I'm Eulalia Nadal. I'm Chief Corporate Officer at DB Foods, which includes also the CIO role.
And GB Foods, what kind of company is that, Eulalia?
It's a food company, so we sell pasta, sauces, table sauces, soup, liquid soup bouillon, so this kind of food.
Okay, thank you so much. Agostinho?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Agostino Scornaienchi. I'm really happy to be here with you this afternoon. I am the CFO of Terna. Terna is the Italian national TSO, transmission and system operator. We manage high voltage line in the country as RTE in France or Red Eléctrica in Spain. I'm also the chairman of the Italian CFO Association.
Okay, thank you and very warm welcome, Agostino. Xavier from France, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, thank you, Hendrik. Very glad to be with you today. I'm Xavier Baraton, in charge of all the accounting and administrative work within Carrefour France. Carrefour is a digital retail company, and I'm very happy to have this roundtable with you today.
Okay, super. Welcome, Xavier. Gwen?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Hendrik. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's a joy to be here and be surrounded by this inspirational group of digital leaders, and I'm really looking forward to today's panel discussion. My name is Gwen van Berne. I'm involved with different organizations with larger scale, smaller scale, profit and not-for-profit, but I've worked for the financial services industry for 20 years. And also in my last role, I was the CFO for an internet governance organization. So I will bring also that CFO's perspectives to today's discussion. And I'm also a volunteer leader for the Institute of Management Accountants. I will be next year's chair. So, and in that institute, we serve the management accounting profession all over the world.
Thank you so much, Gwen, for that introduction. Hitesh.
Thanks, Hendrik. Thanks for having us here. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hitesh Ramani. I am a Chief Accounting Officer at UiPath. UiPath is a global software technology company. We are focused on robotic process automation, and we have a fully automated enterprise platform. Prior to joining UiPath, I was audit partner at Deloitte. I'm in this profession for the last 20 years. And as part of that, in addition to serving my clients for their audit needs, I was advising them in connection with digital controllership. Happy to be here.
Okay, so we've got a wonderful panel here with us today, Armand. I mean, we have top professionals, both from the CIO role and from the CFO role. And so we have prepared three questions for the panel here today. And the first question is about the driver for change in the organization. And what I suggest is that we start with a small clip of the leadership deep dive interview that we did with Eulalia as an introduction for this question.
GB Foods is a food company growing really fast, mainly present in Africa and Europe. We have products in different categories. We produce soups, we produce pasta, noodles, table sauces, and other topics like ready meals or teas and infusions. Our company has a mantra, delivering while transforming. We have been always in constant change. It's part of our DNA. For me, this kind of vertical concept of departments doesn't exist anymore, and no one standalone takes any decisions. One of the things that we are very good at is to keep this startup mindset, in the sense of constantly looking how to be more efficient, to be more lean, combined with a clear concept of flexibility.
Okay, and with that, we have done a very nice introduction, I think, for the first question. And so I'm just going to show you the question again. And Amo, if maybe you could introduce the question and give us a bit of background.
Thank you, Hendrik. Actually, just as a warm-up for the discussion, we thought it would be great to ask you, but just in a few seconds, to tell us, each of you, what is a key driver for transformation, for change in your company. So maybe let's start with Krista. Just, a few words. Krista.
Thank you very much, Armand. I think we have two different aspects of drivers for change in our company. We, of course, have the internal drivers of change. All our employees who look at improving the business and serving the customer day for day are big drivers of change. But obviously, on the external side, big drivers of change are our customers' needs and the ever-changing markets. And I mean, if you look at the logistics industry and just the impact of the last 22 months on the logistics industry, on the supply chains, you can imagine what kind of a ride we've had for the last 22 months and what an impact that has on our day-to-day business. And now, obviously, that is a big driver for us to look at how can we take that, how can we take what we achieved in these months, future-proof it and drive that forward.
Thank you, Krista. Xavier.
That's an amazing question. As you know, Carrefour has a job to ensure the food transition for all. So better serve our customers in this particular pandemic. That was a tremendous job done by every member of Carrefour in order to give and to sell food to everyone. What are the drivers for change? I would say the external one is the inflation. That will be our main cancer next year. That will be a tremendous job to monitor all our finance KPIs within it. So to answer very shortly to your question, our main, I would say that the target we have is to become more and more data-centric, and to be seen, to be considered, and to think digital first everywhere. That's mainly where we are working.
Xavier. Thank you. Eulalia.
Yeah, I would say on top of what Krista and Xavier already mentioned, so we clearly have our consumer needs that are changing, and also all this fast moving, I would say, environment that we are facing, especially since the COVID situation, that are forcing us to to bring this flexibility and this adaptation that as much as you are a bigger organization, it's more difficult to bring it internally. So I would say this need for fast adaptation, not only for the consumer needs, also for everything that is happening, it's a big driver for us to change.
Thank you. Agostino?
Well, I think that the main task for us is what people call energy transition, energy transformation. Talking about energy, the main question is how to provide the same level of service that we provide to our population, to our customers. That, by the way, in Europe has been excellent. Today we consider risk of disconnection in terms of seconds per year. This is something that we ensured based on a certain type of electric system with a good combination of different technologies, including technologies with the high level of CO2 emission. Today, this is not something that could continue in the future. So here the main challenge, how to provide the same level of service also for the future, moving from a carbon-oriented market to a completely carbon-free market. Everyone is talking about the soft part, the nice part of the process. Everyone is talking about electric mobility. Everyone is talking about renewable. No one is talking about the technical implication to make this process successful happening. And this is our job. And this is the most important thing that we have to do in the energy market in the coming years.
Thank you, Agostino. Gwen, you are talking to a number of CFOs currently. So how would you summarize what you see as drivers from all these companies?
Yeah, thanks so much, Amal. Well, I think it's fascinating times, right? I think already the last 10 years, we've seen the enormous impact of tech. And of course, this also was a main driver for CFOs in all different organizations, right? To make usage of all these new possibilities that tech has to offer. But of course, it can also be very disruptive, right? I mean, it can change business models. So you really have to look at what kind of services do I provide indeed, and what are my customer needs to make sure that you stay relevant. But then also on top of these enormous technology drive and shift, the last 2 years, we've also seen that the pandemic had a lot of impact, right? So I think it's a fascinating time, but it's very obvious and very clear that every organization, it doesn't matter in which sector you are, I think everybody is looking at opportunities to grow and to become better. So yeah, it's really about, finding an optimal balance, but also again in tech, don't forget about the people side, right? About the human aspects, and also make sure, I think one of the key driver will be what is the expectation from society? What do they expect from your organization? And how can you make sure that you also listen to that voice? Very important, I feel.
Yeah. Thank you, Gwen. Hitesh, your UiPath is very, very successful. You went through an impressive IPO, but I'm sure you cannot live with status quo, and that the market is pushing you to change, progress still. So what will be your key drivers, except for the market, of course?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As you highlighted, and I think one of the common themes here that I've been hearing is, it's no secret that intelligent process automation technologies, they bring strategic shift in how enterprises operate. These technologies allow enterprises on how to accelerate their digital transformation journey, and as a result, scale their businesses. From our standpoint, the key drivers, it all started with the onset of pandemic, and especially now with Great Resignation. What we are seeing is substantial growth and opportunities because most corporations now want to expand their intelligent process automation technology footprint. And as a result, we are really working hard by expanding our partnership network to ensure that we are meeting such demand.
Thank you, Hitesh. Hendrik, for you, for the next question.
Yeah, absolutely. That was an amazing summary, I would say. Of what are the drivers for change in the economy, in the global economy. If you look at it, our Great Resignation, so our employees making sure that they're happy, that they stay with us, that they work well, the changing needs of the consumer, make sure that you have a very flexible organization, the impact of tech on all our companies, of the pandemic, of inflation, which is of course. And we have some CFOs around us here today, so that's an important impact. of data. The data is an important one, and the energy that is so, and the global warming and how we're going to solve that. So many drivers of change, and I think we can say that to make sure, like Roger said before, that we address these drivers of change and the transformation that we need to go through. We need to optimize our processes. We need to optimize the way that we work. We have to give our people more interesting work to do to make sure that they stay in our company. So automation is certainly an important factor in helping to address these drivers of change. So the questions that I would like to put to the panel now is, well, tell us a little bit, where are you in your process of implementing enterprise automation? And so where are you with your robots, with your RPA, with your artificial intelligence? Where are you applying that? What are the results? So there's many different topics that we can talk about here. So Krista, maybe we can start with you again. So at DB Schenker, where are you? How mature are you in your adoption, and what are the results? Tell us all about it.
If I should tell you all about it, I fear that it would take longer than the time we have. So I'll just highlight a couple of aspects of where we are in our automation journey. For us, automation is a very broad field. I mean, the obvious one is the back office processes that we are automating. We have more than 150 RPA use cases live today in all sorts of different topics. I think one of the first ones was actually an air ocean in the Americas, where, and I have to just make sure that I say the right thing, where we automated the download of the electronic proof of delivery from different sources, and then attach it to the emails and automatically then sent it out to our customers and things like that. Our chatbot went live in 2019 and is live in 8 different countries, mainly across Europe, but also internally in Singapore. We automate in the back office in more the accounting fields, in different tax operations and different billing fields. But I think some really even more tangible aspects are our focus on automation in the warehouses. And obviously, we are also focusing on autonomous driving. As you can imagine, especially in our industry, that is definitely a big topic, even if it is still quite a challenge with all the different legislations in the different countries. But in the warehouse area, not just robotic process automation, but actual robots is what we are looking at to deliver pallets, to unpack the picking part of it, and all sorts of different topics where we have many interesting examples where we're testing actual robot automation, not robotic automation. So a broad field of automation in our, not just our industry, but in our company.
Well, and if we look more specifically at RPA, software robots, artificial intelligence, the software part of it, how far are you in your development there? Do you have a specific competence center that works on that? Do you have the necessary skills in-house? Where are you in your journey on if there would be a maturity level on RPA automation, enterprise automation? Where would you picture yourself?
I would say we're somewhere in the middle if we looked at a maturity level of the journey. We do have a competence center, both distributed competence centers, and then my chief of architecture and integration systems, who then has sort of the overarching responsibility for it and orchestrates it. We have all sorts of different roles in there, architects, the actual service maintenance running it, and they work very closely with the process designers from the business or functional unit area. So yes, we are building on our different slightly distributed competence centers and keeping them together from a central standpoint to make sure that it all fits together and that we integrate it into our ERP system, but also into our large transport management systems and other big systems.
Okay, and do you believe what Roger told us, that 30% of office work can be completely automated by software processes?
I think that's actually understating it. If you want to hear my opinion, we had discussions when I was still with the actual German railway about how maybe even on the financial controlling side, that number could be much, much higher, and discussed it with our CFO at the time. So I think depending on what area you look at, there is large potential for automation, because today, at least this is just my private opinion, in many roles, people are so bogged down with all these processes, with all this manual work of sorting things and all this repetitive work, that they're not actually doing the work of analysis, the work that was actually intended for their roles. So I think there's a huge potential, probably larger than the 30%, which would free up a lot of potential, partially to then actually have cost savings, but partially to actually add much more value add in these office functions to bring the corporate environment to the next level.
Okay, that's good news, I would say. So thank you for sharing that, Christa. Xavier, let's go from Germany to France. And at Carrefour, Christa talked about finance being a very natural domain to implement these, let's say, these newer technologies. Where are you in your journey at Carrefour?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would say, first of all, in terms of maturity, I will start with this question of maturity level. I consider myself as a learner, so I would say we are always beginning a new something. Okay, we can't say we are done with something. Today, within Carrefour France, that I'm serving as a chief accounting officer, we have around 220 robots, mainly in finance. They are in very good technology. It's not Hitesh that will contradict me, because it's from UiPath. And they are here for 2 to 3 years already. So I would say we are now in a stage where we are not really implementing new robots or rethinking our processes. Before that, we created within Carrefour what we call a school for the digital lean approach. So we first think of the process before we implement a tool. That's something very important. So we revisit our processes, we rethink, we challenge, and that's really now, I would say, in the mindset of everyone. Even though, to be honest, 2 years of pandemic, with the time we spend at home, I would say, give a bit of sense of we are done. We will be quiet for now. Whereas we must accelerate. We must continuously rethink the way we work. So this is in terms of number of RPA where we stand. We are as well in a big project. The name of the project is Coffee. We are implementing the latest SAP version, S/4HANA, within Carrefour as a group, and as well for Carrefour France. So as you can imagine, it's a big change. Our previous tools was implemented like 20 years ago. So it's quite a tremendous change. All our robotic that we implemented needs to be reinvented. So we do have the competency. You mentioned a bit before about the competency center. We do have one within Carrefour France that we share as well with the rest of the group when it's needed. What we are trying, our bet nowadays, as I mentioned, within the accounting and within the finance team, we are bringing new talents. We are bringing data analysts. We are bringing data scientists. We are bringing data architects, working in parallel and together, hand to hand with the IT, with our IT teams. We are, of course, sharing the same vision in order to implement and to fasten our growth. As I mentioned, our CEO mentioned in November our ambition to be digital first and thinking really about the data. So, and to give I would say a last comment on our center of expertise. In order there is a force outside of us that is nowadays pushing a lot, which are all the regulations. Comes from the tax authorities, it comes from the states, it comes from the RGPD, it's come from, I would say, from a bit everywhere in order to protect the privacy and so on and so forth. And with this, I would say there is a change in the paradigm. So we must adapt ourselves. We must implement data analysis. We must think another way in order to be able to answer to these new questions or these new requirements that are coming to us. As I know I can talk for hours, I will stop now and let my friends to talk a bit now. But okay. Just to conclude, we have a lot within Carrefour of optimism. We are changing a tool that we had from the last 20 years. We need to rethink the full robotic we implemented with the marvelous technology. But we do see this as an opportunity. We do see this as a tremendous way to learn and to grow together.
Okay, let's move from France to Spain, more precisely to Barcelona. So Eulalia, tell us at GB Foods, you're in fast-moving consuming goods, many processes and so on. So where are you in your adoption?
I would say also taking Roger's description of the different stages, we are moving out from this pilot concept. So I think we have clearly shown to the organization the beauty of robotics and process automation. And what we are moving more to build what here we call a competence center. We call it digital office, to establish the right governance, to expand, I would say, this process redesign that includes the automation piece, because we always like to talk about process rather than only automation, to other areas. And we are exploring now customer service. We are exploring even operations as an area of expansion. And one of the things that we are putting a lot of effort also, it's a measurement of the impact. And this is where the CFO also is helping us a lot, mainly because they like it, is that once you automate the process, what do you do with all these resources that you free up to really bring them to a more value-adding tasks? Or what do you do with the efficiencies that you create? No? How do you monitor that, and how do you reinvest in the company, or which decisions do you take with that? So we are in that stage. We mainly work with external resources. It's true that we are now starting building internal capabilities. There is still a lot of work to do on I would say, training or educating our business colleagues in the concept of what is required to make automation efficient, because not all the process can be automated unless you put certain rules of the game of minimum standardization or minimum repetitiveness, I would say. So this is also something that is ongoing, but we are in that stage that we have now more demand than capacity, so which is great because it means that we have created impact and we have demonstrated the beauty of all these things.
Okay, very interesting. Let's move from Barcelona to Rome. Agostino, what's the at Terna? Where are you in your adoption of the new enterprise automation platforms?
Well, let me continue on the energy aspects. Italian electricity system has been built in the latest, 80 years, as it was in the rest of Europe. And until 20 years ago, the Italian system was based more or less on 700 power plants providing electricity. And those 700 power plants were providing to our central control room a signal every 15 seconds. So 800 plants, a signal per 15 seconds. Where we are today, we are more than 800,000 power plants. Of course, a smaller size, because we have plenty of renewable, plenty of solar power plants that are providing signal every 5 milliseconds. So you can easily understand which is the order of magnitude of the revolution in terms of data management. So managing something like 800,000 power plants with signal every second is something that you cannot do by phone. So the level of investment needed to manage, to control this enormous digital transformation is really a task for us, and it's a task for the common future. Consider that managing a system, talking about, let me say, the less known part of the energy transition, managing an electricity system based on renewable is, first of all, an IT task, because it is more and more complicated, and the time that you have to react to some variation that could create outages or could create impact on the quality of service is something that humans cannot do anymore. It is something that only machine can do anymore. We are fully concentrated on that. Consider that out of 9 billion of investment that we have imagined for the Italian electricity grid from 21 to 25, 1 billion is connected to digital. So is a big portion is really a big portion, and we are pushing hard on this.
Okay, 1 billion is going into digital at Terna right now, and you have an explosion of data. Very, very interesting to share that. By the way,
brilliant.
By the way, for those of you who are following this conference on our Hopin platform, there's a very active chat going on there. Please keep that going and chat amongst yourselves, but also put your questions in there. Luc Hendricks, our CEO, is monitoring that chat. And whenever he feels like, he will come in and bring some interesting questions to this panel. And as you have seen also in Hopin, we're running a poll, so please be active in that poll as well. Let's go from Rome to New York. Hitesh, you live inside the automation company. So how do you eat your own dog food, or better, drink your own champagne? Where are you in the process of drinking your own champagne, Hitesh?
Hendrik, absolutely. It's important that we make sure that we actually drink our champagne. So that's a very, very important question. So Hendrik, as I highlighted earlier, I used to be an audit partner at Deloitte, and I used to advise my clients at Deloitte on digital controllership, how future of controllership should look like. So when I joined UiPath, I was extremely pleasantly surprised and impressed with our finance and accounting organization specifically. Because what I noted is, in addition to having 150 employees, we had 250 plus robots or automations within the finance and accounting organization. Almost 20% of our workforce is a digital workforce, and automation is central to our finance and accounting strategy, including our technology stack. When I look at it, for go-to-market, for finance and accounting, for people ops, it's really cutting edge, best in class in terms of 100% cloud-based, designed and built for scalability. So for us, this is part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. We, in fact, encourage our teams to become citizen developers and also identify opportunities and continue to do automation. We think about automation way more than just a bandit solution. We think it's part of our core strategy. So we want to make sure that there is a consistent pipeline of ideas on what to automate and how to automate.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Hitesh. I know that Luc has a question from the chat that he wants to bring in. So Luc, tell us, what is the question that you have for this panel here?
So a lot of CIOs are still struggling with some legacy applications, and they're now applying RPA to automate without fundamentally re-engineering their systems behind it. And so as kind of a bandage type solution in the short term on traditional infrastructure and additional applications. What's your point of view? Is that the right way forward, or should we really use it more to fundamentally automate business processes?
Okay, the floor is open. Who wants to take the question?
Maybe I'll give it a shot first. I think that it's necessary for each and every one of those use cases to do a business case. And if it's worthwhile, I think it's definitely worthwhile to go for it quickly to then also have the positive effects. That shouldn't stop us from at the same time modernizing our landscape, at the same time finishing our cloud migrations and similar, and then setting up a more forward-looking, maybe more robust automation environment. But I think a lot can be done with little, so to say, also in the legacy field and also in such an environment.
Bouke Keul of the city of Amersfoort in the Netherlands is arguing that if you take away the pain by applying a bandage or a short-term solution, probably you'll never get round to the full solution anymore because it's not hurting that much anymore.
You could argue that way, but if I look at, for example, our cloud migration at the German Railway, one way of increasing the pressure was selling our data center. And if you then look at that, we still automated before we finished our cloud migration. We still automated before we modernized. And I mean, the modernization will never stop, the systems and so on. So I think using a mixture of measures, including creating some facts that then obviously up the need to move forward will definitely help with that.
Xavier, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I will first be totally in line with Krista. It's a mixture. What I would like to answer to the to the kind of question, yeah. But if we put bandages only, then we will not go to the root cause of our problems, and we will never solve it. The way we are thinking, and what I implemented in my previous company as well, is to say, then what is the solution? We continue to suffer? That's not something we can afford. Nowadays, with the big resignation, a lot of people are moving outside of our companies. So we need to ensure that they are happy, they are motivated, they can give all their capabilities towards the company. For that, we need to have quick wins, exactly like Krista said. So we implemented, and we are trying to do it nowadays within Carrefour. Hitesh mentioned it as well, is the UiPath Studio X, which is developing a tool where a lot of people that are not specific, people, developer, and so on and so forth, can create on low code, on automation, and so on and so forth. What is important to keep in mind on our side, at least, is we need to reinvent ourselves almost every day. And as a matter of fact, it's not because we need to reinvent that we need to have a roadmap for the next 20 years before we start. Then we will just be PowerPoint people. So that's not doable. We need to see everywhere small things in order to motivate people to say, okay, let's explore, let's expand our capabilities and brainstorm together in order to implement new things. What we are doing, we try to do, it's not easy every day, is to put a lot of parallelization. So we have a vision, and we are working a lot with a data lake concept. So we put all the data, whatever the legacy is, we put them in data sets that we can then exploit, use and I would say do some reports based on that one. So we need to be agnostic of the legacy. Yes, but the legacy is very old. Okay, my friend. So we put robot automation, we extract the data, we secure the data, and that's the part of, I would say, the IT. And then on the other side, we check if the data makes sense within finance, and then we can do exploitation of the data. We do some reports. We can give value to that data. That's the way I would say. But don't wait for being prepared, because we'll never start.
Okay, Gwen, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, because what you want to avoid, of course, is that you're only going to add an extra layer on your already very complicated infrastructure. I think this is what you don't want. But then, of course, there are so many areas, process-wise, that you can automate to indeed free up your staff to make sure that they can focus on more higher value work. So this is then the balancing act, I think, to see, okay, where are those processes in your organization. And of course, like Krista also mentioned, right, in back office functions, everywhere where there's a lot of document handling, archiving, what have you, you can probably automate this. I've also done a lot of, successful automation is this with the client onboarding. That's always also a bit like handling, due diligence. Of course, in the financial service industry, we've gained so much by looking at those particular aspects of your organization. So again, I think it's a balancing act. You have to be smart about it, but for sure you need to utilize it in the best way possible. And I think there are very good opportunities there.
Eulalia, you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, just a couple of things, because I think this is exactly one of the topics that the partnership between CIO and CFO has a key role, because all these legacy investments, which are more mid-long-term, large investments, this is what you really build that partnership with the CFO, and they are typically really great sponsors to never forget about bringing money to do that long-term fixes. While for me, this kind of discussions about putting, I would say, short-term quick wins that may look like patches, for me, it's a question of establishing the rules of the game. So where do you put them, in which areas, even if there is not a business case for at which extent you cover certain legacy gaps or not. So for me, the governance, even in these interim solutions, is key also to ensure that even if you do that, you do it in a well thought way.
Okay, great question, great answers. I would like to pose another question to the panel here, and that is, if there's an opportunity to automate 30 or 50% of back office work, the tools are there. Why aren't we there yet? Why don't you just do it? I mean, what's holding you back? What are the challenges of adopting this enterprise automation quicker and on a company-wide level? Maybe Agostino, why haven't you done this yet?
Very good question. Well, you know, I think that in finance department in general, by the way, in the past, I've also covered the role of CIO in one of my previous experience. So I've kept together the two words for a while. Well, I think that in finance, we spent more or less the latest 20 years to build the machine to extract figures from the system, to understand the business and to explain the business. So the standard approach was, okay, I have a really complicated business. I have to invent something that will allow to me to control everything, more or less. This is the way we approached to SAP more or less 20 years ago, and this is the way we follow when we have to update SAP or similar infrastructure. Saying, okay, I want to perform at least the same things that I was performing until yesterday. I think that, okay, we did a decent job. Figures are there, but by surprise, everything changed, because also accounting tools, accounting supporting tools, controlling tools are not anymore something company specific, but it's becoming more and more a commodity. It's something that you can easily find on the market. You have not to invent anything else. There is something that has been already invented. I do not pretend that I am the only one in the world that is managing an electricity grid. We are in a globalized world. There are a lot of experience from which I could benefit for. And simply, if I have no idea, I could simply copy what is already existent. I think that now the most difficult part is not to find the figures, is how to manage a lot of figures that are more and more respect to the past, even too much. Okay, we have a lot of different channels. Until a few years ago, we prepare an yearly year-end income statement. After a while, we started to do that every 3 months. Now we have hundreds of channels every day. There is a Twitter, or there is a LinkedIn, or there is something popping up with financial information that in any case you are obliged to control, that in any case you are responsible for. So I think that what we have to change a little bit in our mindset is not to consider ourselves as exceptions, is to consider that, okay, there is something that is available on the market. Let's buy it at the cheapest price with the more efficient way to have it in the business, being forced to change a little bit our approach. Mm-hmm. I think that what we have faced in the recent 2 years was an extraordinary experience on this extent. You know, administration is quite a traditional business, a traditional job, and it was super traditional internal. Well, I was really concerned at the beginning of the pandemic about the reaction of our accounting people. I'm not talking about controlling M&A, people that are already skilled with PowerPoint, skilled with English, skilled with working from remote, but I'm talking about the accounting guys and the accounting ladies that I always seen in the corridor. Well, I think that it was really a surprise for me to see that forcing a little bit these aspects, given that you have no choice. Mm-hmm. The reaction of the people was excellent. Yep. And the reason why the reaction was excellent is related to the fact that the product was there and the product was available, and the level of, let me say, usability of the existing accounting tool is something that you can manage from everywhere. Yep. I think that this was a real success.
Okay. Other challenges you face in your organization to accelerate and to just implement automation on an enterprise level? What's holding you back?
Well, I said before.
Well, Krista, maybe we can go to Krista.
Thank you. If I look at it, I mean, automation, especially in those kind of processes that are that have been around for forever, basically as long as there are companies, is a huge change endeavor. So it's not just the automation of the process, it's first actually getting the project running with the right people who are willing to work on eliminating their jobs at the end of the day, defining the processes. Then you have to get you have to not just do the pilot, you have to actually get it to scale, and then you have to actually change the organization. And I think if you look at that, it's quite the large endeavor. It's very easy to automate something on a small scale. It is really a challenge to not just automate, but change the whole culture around the automation on a much larger scale. And if I listen to all of us, I mean, we've all started on the automation journey where several steps along the path, but it hasn't been that long. So I think we're heading in that direction, but we have to do it in a complete change view as well.
So the change management and the impact on people, is that the big hurdle that needs to be taken, Xavier?
Yeah, that's the only thing to do, by the way. Our French CEO, Ramani, showed us a pyramid, very basic one. At the top of it, there is a tool, because everyone who has an issue come and say, I need a tool. And then our CEO says, yeah, look back just behind the top of the pyramid, in the middle of the pyramid. What do you read here? It's written processes. So think your process before asking a tool. Maybe the process needs to be reinvented. And then go to the bottom of the pyramid. And the word over there is culture. So Krista, I definitely agree with what you said. We need to embark people. We need to show them that there is an interest for them in order to recreate the passion of everyone, in order to say, okay, I will do something else. I will not be fired. I will not be outside of the company. This is why we need to bring together competencies in order to accelerate. And maybe one comment on the why it's not done yet. I think finance people are like IT. You give all your energy to the business. So you focus first on the business as a company, and you said, okay, on my side, digital retail company, we need to focus on e-commerce. So all the investment will be focused first on the e-commerce rather than accounting and controlling. At the same time, this is why we need to embark our people to add new talent in order to do it in parallel of everyone, in order then to push this change of culture.
Okay, Hitesh, what's your take on this? And does UiPath, you provide any specific solutions to help this change process?
Absolutely, Hendrik. So I think, first of all, I believe that one of the big barriers on adoption is actually because there is it's a lack of sufficient standardized business cases. Like, people don't know exactly what to automate and how to automate. And so what it does is, as a result, employees have to be creative. They have to identify opportunities on their own. And that's where it goes back to what Krista and Javier was mentioning, is it's a change mindset. They need to make sure that they are taking a conscious effort out of their busy schedule to identify where they should go and do automation. So what UiPath has done over the last year or so, we've actually expanded some of our intelligent process automation technologies, and we call them as Discover Pillar. Within the Discover Pillar, we have technologies such as task capture, task mining, and process mining. As Javier was highlighting, these technologies allow corporations to go and identify where are the pressure points. Either the employees can run a task capture on what they're doing to understand what is it that they're doing on a repetitive basis that can be automated, or it can allow corporations to go and do process mining and understand where within the processes are the bottlenecks that they need to go and automate. So one of the key things is corporations have to use assistance from several technologies, such as task mining and task capture, process mining, but they also need to use help from their own employee base through crowdsourcing, where they can actually contribute and identify areas where automation opportunities exist.
Okay, thank you. Hitesh, Eulalia?
Well, I would just to add also that I think the IT agenda is full of other topics also, and this is a stopper also, because we also have cybersecurity and we have merchant acquisitions and integrations and all this stuff. So, and these legacy upgrades that are always there. So for me, this is also, it's choose your battle. So sometimes you cannot do only one thing, you need to cover several things. And this is also a reason why we are not as fast as we could be.
Yeah, but I mean, what struck me was that you said there's more demand than that you can cope with. Yeah. Is that because you don't have the budget, you don't have the skills, it's difficult to find people, you need to train your people? What's really holding you back there?
Well, in our experience, we could outsource the skill. So it's something that many companies are offering. Even the software suppliers themselves, they offer the capacity, but sometimes a budget is a limitation. So we don't have unlimited, or we don't have the 1 billion that Agostino was mentioning. I would love to have it, but we don't. So you need to put priorities also. So yes, budget is one of the clear stoppers also. Not much skills, I would say.
Okay. Good. What I suggest, ladies and gentlemen, is that we go to the next question. And we have a very fine panel here. And Armo, why don't you introduce question number 3 here? And you are on mute. So if you could please unmute.
I think it's better when I am not mute. Yes, thank you, Hendrik. It was a great exchange just before. And so now we can talk about how CIOs and CFOs can work together for the benefit of the company in this automation journey, because it is a journey. Maybe before we start with the first question and recommendation from the panel on how to best work together, I would like to stress the fact what has been discussed, that we are not only talking about using the best technology for the CIOs or reducing cost for the CFOs. I think and maybe as the first question would be, it's not only about quantitative ROI, it's also about qualitative results. And let me list, but you can add in the panel, like compliance, quality of work life for the employees, efficiency. So it's not only about numbers. So maybe before we see how CIOs and CFOs can work together, maybe we should ask the panel, how do they feel about actually trying to go for automation while they not always find ROI, and they have to look also into qualitative ROI or results. Any feedback, and which to me is the base for how CFOs and CIOs can work together. So who would like to start?
Yeah, I'd be happy to start on that one. I mean, obviously, automation has the obvious cost effects or other benefit effects, but as you say, there are a lot of other effects. And you mentioned work-life balance of employees, but I think as an employer, we have to look at it from a slightly different perspective as well. We are all facing labor markets that are increasingly tight, and it's increasingly difficult to find skilled labor, skilled employees, and therefore looking at automation from that perspective and looking at especially what kind of tasks can we automate and thereby free up the existing labor for more value-added tasks, and also reduce the amount of employees necessary in certain areas is definitely also part of future-proofing what we're doing as one big aspect. And another aspect, through automation, we reduce human error in actually typing in certain things, and we increase the speed that we can answer our customers, that we can work with our customers, which is, to me, a very, very large qualitative benefit.
Yeah, I agree with Krista. I think in today's era, as we talk about great resignation, employee experience is monumental. Automation allows corporations retain and attract talent. It improves overall employee happiness, because when they come to work, then show up to work, they're actually contributing in a very valuable manner versus doing mundane tasks. That is absolutely key there. And I think both CIOs and CFOs should take that into account, is how do you improve overall employee experience? Of course, there are other aspects that Krista highlighted, ensuring there is a great quality. It allows businesses scale faster, ensures that you can make sometimes decisions which are system agnostic. In the event, if you're looking for systems in market and if it doesn't have all the features, you can complement such systems with RPA technology or other IPA technology. So of course, outside of just efficiencies, which is measured in terms of number of hours saved, there are several different benefits that both CIOs and CFOs should be focusing on.
Anybody else would like to react?
Yeah, I would say that also, especially in early stages of starting these RPAs, it's always useful also to bring this concept within the innovation umbrella, because when companies talk about innovation, it's easier to make people understand why there is not a direct revenue, I would say, on the investment. And once you move to I would say non-pilot phases, for me, everything can be measured. So people that think that you cannot measure cost avoidance, that's not true. You always can measure everything, even if it's an estimated amount. But there is always a financial impact of everything that you do. So it's a question of getting the right training or the right, I would say, support in order to help these measurements, and also choosing the right areas where to pilot that or where to develop these things, even the size of what you automate. So you should not start with a full end-to-end process. You can start with a piece of it that helps you to first bring some value, and then, so I think there are enough mechanisms to, in each phase, to protect that this is not a stopper to continue with RPA.
Yeah, thank you, Ralia. Anybody else?
Yeah, maybe one quick comment on that one. How we can work together, I would say the first thing is to share the same vision. If we don't share the same vision, if we are not going the same direction, without knowing all the steps, we need to acknowledge that we don't know. We are trying things, we want to explore things, but we need to ensure that we have some guidelines that will help us to, I would say, not be a constraint rather than an accelerator. So that's share the vision. Then we need to apply a very simple methodology that we are rediscovering every day within Carrefour, is the test and learn approach. We need to test, we need to learn, and then what do we learn based on the test we just mentioned, and then we go again and go again with small steps every day. This because we are learning together, and we need to learn together. And what I'm trying to do is to explain how accounting and finance are working towards my friends in IT, in order to explain to them what is the impact, because they are extracting data, they give the data and say, this is the data. I'm sorry, by the way, there is 3 million difference, but I don't know exactly why. I can tell you that there is an impact on my result. So this is why it's important, and so on and so forth. The same way, when I say, can you do again an extraction? Then they will say, no, you're kidding me, because it takes the productivity down, and so on and so forth. So working together in order to understand on the other side, have a bit of empathy as well, not trying to blame the other one, but working and building together. From time to time, we say CFO are controllers and CIO are innovators. I don't believe it at all. I think if a CIO is not a controller of the flow of data, we are dead. And if the CFO is not trying to innovate, to reinvent, to change our processes in order to protect the result, then we are dead as well. So we need to change the paradigms, and I think you understand that, in mixed competencies.
Okay. Gwen, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with what Xavier was saying, because I think what is very important for the working relationship between the Chief Information Officer and the Chief Financial Officer, that they spend enough time to exactly discussing that, right? What is the shared objective? What's the vision for the organization? Also really to prioritize the work, because finding areas where you want to automate is really not difficult, looking at all the possibilities that technology is giving us, looking at also all the disruption. But then prioritizing the work, also making sure that you invest enough time on the people side, like what Krista was also mentioning earlier on, that you develop a strong collective narrative for the organization. So why are we doing this, and how will the future look like, to ensure that everyone in the organization also supports the end state, because this is really, really very important, I feel.
Yeah. Thank you, Gwen. Agostino, did you want to add something? You don't have to, but you're welcome.
No, I'm fully in line with what you're saying. I'm super in line with what said by Eulalia. I think that the key topic here is measurement. I think that you said what CFOs and CIOs should do. Let me add something that they should not do anymore. CIO should not insist with Gartner slides or something, stuff like that, explaining that if you will not spend billions of euros, you will be dead in 10 years, and the CFOs should stop measuring it in the standard way, saying that it's not a workshop, it's not a product, it's something in which you have embedded innovation. So I think that the best advice that we should give is sit together and create a common way to measure the impact.
Yeah, thank you, Agostino. Let's expand on what you just said, and also what Xavier said, talking about friends. And let's be candid. Us CFOs, we started with RPA because when we used to ask our friends in IT to develop new products, to develop bridges between systems, IT said yes, but it will take millions, it will take months or years. So we got fed up with that, and we started doing our own RPA robots. And then, of course, IT said, wow, wait, we have a problem here. You're touching our infrastructure, we have issues with security, and so on. So now we have an issue. How can we work together? And let's go back to cookbook. I would like to have from each of you some recipes on how CIOs and CFOs can work together. And let me maybe give you some ideas in form of questions. Is it by creating COEs where both IT and finance are represented? Is it, but I don't know, what are your recommendations on what would be your recipe on how to get IT and finance to work together? And maybe one way to do it is to have a third party become in charge of automation, like the CDO or the CTO, the Chief Transformation Officer. So you see, I made the question and the answers, but just to have your reactions. So who would like to start? Xavier, you're smiling, so you have something to say.
Okay, yeah, I always have something to say. So I agree with Agostino. We need to sit down and say what should we stop? What is the change in the paradigm that we need to do? We have a way to think. We need to totally reinvent it. So a good recipe, concrete recipe. You leave your chair, you go to the CIO of your company if you are in finance or vice versa, and you sit down. You must spend time together in order to say what do we want, what do we try, what do we don't try, what we stop. What is bothering me, by the way, we are doing a lot of this in the retail. You listen your customer, what we call the round table. So you listen your customer, you listen your friend, and you try to not defend yourself and say, no, but what you are telling me is wrong. You just listen. What will be online? What can I do in order to make your life easier? Okay, you want to do this, I take notes, I see what I can do. And then one day I hope the other one will do the same thing for me. So that's a concrete thing in order to change. Should we add another person in the loop? I don't know. Maybe not. I would say the first concrete recipe: you invite your CIO to a good lunch, and you make this guy your friend. In order to increase your relationship, and then you do this at all level of your structure. You say you spend time with IT. You cannot go all the time to the boss and then exchange in the bosses. No, you need to do everywhere in order to mix teams.
And then you do it the French way. You go and have lunch together. That's a
better way to see France than a riot or a grève. No, what do you think?
Krista, what do you do if your CFO comes to you and say, "Well, I have this pet project that I'm doing myself, and I have these robots, and you shouldn't care about it because you're too slow and so on." How do you manage that?
Now I have to slightly bite my tongue since we probably have a pretty broad audience, but at least in my experience, to have a very clear picture of whose responsibility is what is always very helpful. And I think leaving the technology to IT has a lot of benefits, including the aforementioned security benefits that Armand mentioned, since we monitor very closely who can even connect a system to our main systems in order to have that well under control. But in my experience, CIOs and CFOs work together extremely well because we have, from two different perspectives, a very broad view of the company. We have basically a complete overview of the company. The one side from the financial perspective, and therefore really how does the company work, where is what working or not working, how do all the KPIs change, how's that evolving. And from an IT perspective, at the end of the day, we see all major processes. We see everything that happens in the company from the other perspective. So I think that in itself is a perfect basis to work together at eye level and look at where can we drive change in the company, where can we drive value in the company and value through automation, be it in the back office, be it in the operational parts of the company. And in my experience, that is really, really helpful to do it that way. A little bit of friction is very good, because if you don't have friction and if you don't have the discussions about what is really necessary and how you prioritize it, then the CFO would not be doing his or her job very well either. So that, I think, is part of the discussion and part of the process. So that's, for me, is the way you go forward. And I mean, nowadays, a really good project is a project that has not just IT people in it, but that has the functional unit or business people integrated in the project, so that and I know it's a word that many people just don't like hearing anymore, but in a very agile manner, in the actual sense of it, not in the, we don't know what we want to do, we don't have money, so let's do it anyway kind of sense, but in the true agile sense, we actually work towards the resolution of a problem together with the budget or whatever is there. And so that is how I would solve the issue that you, Hendrik, brought up. If already something existed and we needed to look at, is that the right approach, and how do we do that together?
Hitesh, you wanted to add to that, I see.
Yes, absolutely. We do slightly differently at UiPath. We have a COE, but that COE sits under the CFO organization versus the CIO organization. And we also have an automation champion for each of the organizations. The role of the automation champion is to understand the pipeline and do the prioritization. And then the automation champion will evaluate, what opportunities should go to the COE, or do we need to use an external help, or do we need to use citizen developers to build the automation? The COE, while they are responsible for overall development and deployment, they are closely aligned with CIO, mainly from a security standpoint, to ensure that there is a proper governance process in place, not only for the new opportunities where they are doing some development work, but also for ongoing maintenance. So we operate it slightly differently, and I think we've seen great results coming from that.
Okay, very good.
Who else would like to add?
Yeah.
Quinn.
Yeah, I think the relationship has a lot of potential, right? Krista was also mentioning they both oversee the entire organization and all the processes. And if I look at my last role as CFO, my chief information officer was really also my best buddy, because we both really shared that same goal and objective for the organization. There was also complete trust about that, but I was always actively also looking for his feedback to see, okay, what can we do better? How can we prioritize? And then it can be such a fruitful bond. So again, I think they're both naturally very well positioned in the organization to make a change now with all the technical impacts going on. So yeah, but be open-minded. I think both have to understand where the roles overlap, but also where they are different, and stay open-minded for each other's challenges. I mean, IT is really also super bombarded with a lot of requests, and again, also here resources are limited, so make best use of that and work together to prioritize the projects and the change needed.
So Eulalia, is your CFO your best friend at GB Foods?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. And for me, the state of the art, in my experience, it's when the CIO and the CFO together, they go to the rest of the business partners with a joint, I would say, approach to have that speech with them. So instead of us discussing, so we are already working such in partnership that the discussions are happening with the CEO or with the chief operations officers on how can we help you, because we bring the technologies, they bring the resources probably. How can we all together help you to achieve your goals or to achieve a higher performance? And for me, this is a state of the art. It's always my goal when I relate with the CFOs.
Okay.
Agostino.
The final words from Rome.
Yeah.
Well, to make a long story short, we are in the middle of business plan preparation, and I will have lunch with my CIO tomorrow. I will let you know.
Okay. But you had both heads, CIO, CFO, and traditionally the CIO used to report to the CFO. I hope in most organizations, I think in most organizations are now more on an equal level, and the board and both in the board of directors. I think so. The traditional relationship has changed. So I can imagine that change also came with some friction. So how's that situation at Terna today?
Today, in Terna, I'm only CFO. I have nothing to do with IT. In the past, by the way, when I was in charge of CFO function for Engie, that is a French company, by the way, I was also in charge of IT. I think that the reason of that decision was an excess of cost and a lack of control of the IT department. So it has been, at the beginning, was a sort of punishment. But again, I think that we find a way to manage it. And the way was to explain the needs and to measure the benefits of each initiative. We also found a huge self-financing, understanding which tools were not used anymore. I realized that we were paying a lot for infrastructure that were not used at full speed and at full power, and we simply abandoned that. I think that there is a tendency of IT managers sometimes to push on investment, but not to make, let me say, after a while, another assessment to understanding what you buy is still useful or not. Given that transformation technology is moving so fast, it's more than frequent that sometimes something that you have bought 2, 3, 4 years ago is not useful anymore. It's not dramatic, it's part of life. Let's do that, let's save money on that, reinvest this money in something that is new. I think that it's more a matter of communication, it's more a matter of, let me say, be open and proactive, not to build any walls among the different functions, and you find the solution. If there is value, it's something that can be measured. Again, Eulalia said that if you cannot measure it, it's useless. Given that it's not useless, simply measure it.
Okay. We have 3 minutes left, so we're coming to the end of this this conference. And before I start thanking everybody, Hitesh, maybe I would give you the floor and the podium for a minute or so. What are your conclusions of what we discussed here today?
First of all, again, thank you. Thanks, everyone. I think this was a very valuable session, Henrik. I think what I learned is, overall, the partnership between CIO and CFOs is critical. And I like the fact that Eulalia mentioned is, you can measure every single thing. So it's just that you need to come together to figure out a uniform way of measuring, the ROI. But again, from my standpoint, there is a lot of opportunity here, and this was a great session. Okay, and so with that, I would like to thank my co-moderator Armand. I would like to thank Gwen, Eulalia, Xavier, Krista, Agostino, and Hitesh for being with us here today. Highly appreciated. We're gonna run before we go two small videos. One video is a clip of the Leadership Deep Dive interview that we did with Hitesh. So make sure to stay for that. And then we're going to finish with a small clip that explains the importance of a community. And so there's communities of CFOs, and there's, of course, a community of CIOs called CIONET. So we have a couple of members that talk about the role of that. So thank you to all the panelists. It was a pleasure. And see you soon again. And let's look at the small clips. Bye for now.
UiPath is a global software company which is focused on robotic process automation for enterprises. It allows enterprises identify repetitive tasks that their employees are performing. This will liberate hours and time for the employees so that they can perform better tasks, which will allow enterprises scale their businesses. Leveraging crowdsourcing, task mining, and process mining, corporations can identify where the automation opportunities exist, which can allow them to develop a plan on what to automate, when to automate, and how to automate. Strategic alignment at leadership level is the key. If ultimately all leaders can see the benefits of the investments that they are going to make, benefits in the form of how it translates into the growth of enterprise value, those are the most successful organizations. That's why I think in the era of great resignation, automation should be the #1 priority for all CIOs and CFOs.
For me, CIONET is all about two things. It's content and a network.
I'm already a long-time member of CIONET, and CIONET provides me with a mean of great knowledge sharing.
I'm a huge fan of the CIONET community. I think communities in general are what we need right now. We're a connected species, and we're connected technically, but we're connected on a human level as well.
So it's really an opportunity to have new ideas, to share ideas, and that's really what makes it interesting for me.
It's really, for me, the way to gather good ideas, meet nice people, and get inspiration for the next year.
It's fun. I really like the fun of it. They have good companies. I'm cycling with the CIONET. I'm liking to drink a glass with them. And every event, it's a very relaxed event, so it's not too serious. So this is for me the added value of CIONET.